Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Mercedes Abramo, President and CEO of Cartier North America, and I'm excited to be here with you in celebration and support of the Cartier Women's Initiative. This evening, we're delighted to bring you an incredible conversation on the topic of building new alliances for women to lead change, followed by a series of lightning talks featuring outstanding women impact leaders recognized by Cartier Women's Initiative and Cartier Philanthropy. Before we dive in, I'd love to first share a little bit more about the Cartier Women's Initiative and some exciting new developments for the 2021 edition of the program. As a Maison, elevating and empowering women has always been at the core of who we are. Through the Cartier Women's Initiative, we're able to shine a light on extraordinary, diverse groups of women from all around the world and support the important work they're doing to create real, impactful change. Celebrating its 15th anniversary this year, the global program was created in 2006, designed to support women entrepreneurs leading early-stage, impact-driven businesses. The program is open to women-run and women-owned businesses from any country and any industry that aim to have a strong and sustainable social and/or environmental impact. For each annual edition, the program selects 24 fellows from around the world and provides them with financial, social, and human capital support to further develop their businesses and leadership potential. In addition to its regional awards, the initiative has launched a new thematic category for the 2021 edition. The new Science and Technology Pioneer Award supports women impact entrepreneurs at the forefront of scientific and technological innovation. Each year, Cartier grants over $1 million in funding to this group of women, making it one of the largest and most generous competitions for women entrepreneurs in the world. To date, the Cartier Women's Initiative has supported over 200 women-led businesses from more than 60 countries, creating more than 7,000 jobs in the process. But for now, back to this evening's programming and this extraordinary group of women you'll be hearing from shortly. With that, I'd like to introduce you to Wendy Sampaio, Global Program Director for Cartier Women's Initiative, and newly appointed Cartier Diversity and Inclusion Ambassador, who will share a little bit about herself and present our esteemed panel of speakers.
Thank you so much, Mercedes. My name is Wendy Sampaio, Global Program Director of the Cartier Women Initiative. COVID has had an unprecedented impact on our world, and according to the UNDP, on some dimension of human development, conditions today are resembling levels last seen in the mid-80s. If ever we needed a proof of concept that we as a human race can collectively respond to a shared global challenge, we're now really living through it. So how do we respond collectively? And what are some new and creative ways of collaborating and building alliances across the full spectrum of forces for good? Today, I'm incredibly honored and excited to be sharing with you our panelists. Three incredibly inspirational women who have been at the forefront of women leading change. We thought to have a conversation with them so that they can share their experience in leading collective action with us. Please join me in welcoming Lisa Curtis, founder and CEO of Kuli Kuli, Lorine Pendleton, VC and investment partner of Portfolia's Rising America Fund, and Yasmina Zaidman, Chief Partnership Officer of Acumen. Thank you so much for joining us today. Perhaps let's start with Lisa. Lisa, can you tell us a bit about Kuli Kuli and maybe share with us some examples of how Kuli Kuli has led collective action?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. So Kuli Kuli is a mission-driven social enterprise. We're actually about 7 years old. I started the company after working with this superfood moringa in the Peace Corps. And I was a volunteer in a very rural village with no electricity, no running water, and not a lot of healthy food. And so I started eating moringa for myself as a way to give myself more energy, and found that it's incredibly nutritious and had the potential to nourish so many people around the world. So started working with some of the farmers in my village and others to sell moringa in the US. And we now sell moringa bars, powders, and snacks in about 11,000 stores. So you can check out our products across the US and online as well. And collaboration has been a huge part of Kuli Kuli's growth. So very early in our journey, we realized that, we were a very small brand on a very big mission, and that if we were going to accomplish this mission, we needed great partners. And so actually our second year on the market, we had the opportunity to work with the Clinton Foundation and Whole Foods Market to develop a new product, a wellness shot that would actually help to reforest Haiti. And it came because a lot of Haitian small farmers were finding that the trees were better used as kind of fuel for wood and fire right away. And so a lot of deforestation was happening. And so they had identified moringa as being a crop that grew locally, but that could start helping people earn money right away through selling the leaves. So that's where they reached out to us, and we said, okay, let's bring in Whole Foods and let's develop a new product that could help support this need. So it was pretty amazing. As at the time we were a 2-person company, had been on the market for only a couple years, to be able to work with bigger organizations. And I think it just speaks to kind of the benefit of being a mission-led company, is that if you have a big mission, it's a big enough umbrella to help bring in other organizations.
Terrific. That's a very inspiring start to Kuli Kuli. And how many people now is Kuli Kuli? You have grown from 2 people to now how many?
So in-house, we're still relatively small. There's 10 people full-time on my team. And then we work with about 3,000 small farmers. So primarily on the African continent, a bit in South America and Southeast Asia as well. And then we have kind of a series of co-manufacturers or factories that we contract with to make all of our bars and shots and powders.
Wow, that is amazing. I think the power of collective action, right in action. Perhaps next, let's move on to Lorine. Lorine, will you tell us a bit about Portfolia and maybe the innovative model of Portfolia to unite individual women together to collectively invest in founder of color?
Sure, great. Hi, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. So I'm a lead partner at Portfolia. I run Rising America Fund, which is Portfolia's diversity fund and their 8th fund that they launched. But Portfolia is actually a really unique model, and they've won awards for it being innovative, the platform. So basically pulling together women angel investors and then pulling that money together into funds around different themes and to make investment decisions. And so each fund has lead investors for each of the funds who make the investment decisions, find great deals to invest in the fund. So the funds range from anywhere from $3 million up to $10 million. And so I launched the Rising America Fund. Actually, I was an investor in 2 prior funds that Portfolio had and was really impressed with the platform. I had been an angel investor, started angel investing about 8 years ago, and really loved the fact that I could invest in a fund, diversify the investments that I made. And the founder, Trish Costello, she knew I wanted to launch a fund. She said, why don't you do it with us? You've been an investor in 2 of our prior funds, which actually had exits, which was really great within a few years, which is pretty unheard of for a VC fund. And so we launched a year and a half ago our Rising America Fund, which actually raised the most money out of all the funds to date. And we've made 9 investments to date. And I have a team, it's 5 of us. We're a team of all Black and Latinx women. We're the first fund in the United States led by a team of all Black and Latinx women, which is really incredible.
Amazing. And in the Rising America Fund, are you able to share with us the number of women investors that you united?
Yeah, so actually we've made 9 investments. Of the 9 investments, 8 are women-led companies. Which is really great. And we've made investments across all types of industries, consumer packaged goods we have 3 fintech companies. We have an ed tech company, a telehealth company focused on women's health. We've invested in quite a different industries, and I'm pleased to say that of those companies, 8 are women-led companies. And one of the things is I want to mention in VC, you don't have traditional VC firms, first of all, don't have a lot of women partners. It's less than 10%. And then if you look at through a lens of diversity, there's very few, only 1% of VC firms have African Americans and slightly above for Latinx. And so I think the fact that we are women of color, we want to invest in companies we want to see in the world and that are solving, really big problems, for impact, but also going to make money for our investors who invest in investment in our fund as well.
Great. Well, perhaps now let's move on to Yasmina. Yasmina, will you be able to tell us a bit about your role as the Chief Partnership Officer of Acumen, and what did partnership at Acumen look like?
Absolutely, and thank you so much for having me here. What an amazing group. Already learning so much. So Acumen is an organization that's really focused on finding innovative solutions to the problems of poverty and using capital and leadership skills creatively to solve those problems. So for us, partnerships is kind of everything because we're operating along the full spectrum of capital, working with early stage entrepreneurs, but also developing commercial funds to help invest and scale companies that can address the problems of poverty. And then we have a whole leadership side of our business, our organization, that really thinks about cultivating leadership and skills of leadership, building a global community of leaders that really value social justice, equity, social impact, and standing with the poor. So in my role as Chief Partnerships Officer, it's really finding the partnerships that can help us advance our work and recognize that it kind of takes all of us. So whether that's working with corporations that are thinking about how to make their business models more inclusive and sustainable, and frankly, really excited to learn about a lot of the innovations that we've supported, but also governments who are thinking about, how to really reach deeply into communities to support new ideas and more of a bottom-up approach to development and social change, as well as individual philanthropists that are often really excited about innovation, wanting to catalyze ideas that don't necessarily get a lot of traction from mainstream funders. So we have the privilege of working across a whole lot of different kinds of organizations in terms of partnerships, and also, frankly, learning from the entrepreneurs in our network and the leaders in our network about the kinds of partnerships that they're building to take on these big challenges.
Great. Thank you so much, Yasmina. Maybe we can move on back to Lisa. Lisa, we have been following you on Forbes. You are a prolific contributor to Forbes, and I really enjoy reading your column, sometimes even drinking Kuli Kuli tea while doing so. And in one of the articles, you had mentioned about this idea that you had around collaborative capitalism. Can you tell us a bit about what you mean by this and how we might be able to put this into action ourselves also?
Yeah, I think women are at the forefront of, breaking the rules of capitalism in so many ways. And I think, if you think of what traditional capitalism is, we're saying, I win and you lose. And I think what we want to be moving towards is a you win and I win and we all win together. And so I think Kuli Kuli does that in quite a few different ways. And proud to be on the stage with so many other women leaders doing it too. But I think one of the ways we think about it is through our supply chain and really figuring out, the farmers we're working with, they're really the experts. It's not us coming in and telling them how to grow moringa or, what they should be doing in Uganda to best work with these crops. We're really learning from them on, okay, what are the crops that you're currently growing? What else would you like to grow? How could that inform Kuli Kuli's product development down the line? And then, taking that as ideas to some of our retailers of, hey, we're seeing that, in Ghana, for example, moringa tea is really taking off. Is that a product you'd be interested in bringing in? And kind of going throughout the full cycle. We also do a lot of talking to other companies in the superfood space and even other companies who are growing moringa, on shelf alongside us, we might be seen as competitors. But for us, it's really about how do we grow the whole market and how do we help more people learn about this amazing superfood and more consumers access it and really making it a win-win for everyone. Great,
terrific. And Yasmina, in your work with specifically, I suppose, with strategic corporate partners, you mentioned, you work with partners to change the world tackle poverty. Can you share with us some example of how you've identified and convened maybe the right coalition to drive change? And what are some successful ingredients for a good partnership? And how do you measure success once you form this together and do work together?
The opportunity around collaboration is tremendous, but it is hard work. And so I think it's always really important to go in understanding kind of what is the value proposition of collaborating rather than, going it alone or doing something kind of with one other organization. And so for Acumen, one of the areas where we saw huge opportunities for collaboration was in the off-grid energy space, where there's a tremendous lack of access. It's, SDG 7 aims to achieve energy access for all because it's such a driver of inclusion in the economy and progress and economic opportunity. But, close to 1 billion people lack reliable access to energy. And that was a space where we really felt there was this need, not just opportunity, to bring different stakeholders together, particularly in this work that we do to catalyze early stage innovation. So we developed an initiative about 6 years ago called the Pioneer Energy Investing Initiative, and really reached out broadly, not only to funders, and we were able to work with a range of funders from government funders like UK Aid, one of the largest foundations in the world, the IKEA Foundation, corporate partners like Autodesk and Philips Lighting that were really interested in leveraging some of their capabilities and technology, and individual foundations and family offices. But beyond that, we knew that if we wanted to move the needle in the sector, we needed to go beyond the funding question and think about how are we trying to answer big questions about energy access, right? We want to actually solve SDG 7. So we built a whole network of stakeholders that are really at the forefront of developing innovations, understanding the kind of capital needed, supporting entrepreneurs. And that work has allowed us to see the sector move tremendously. But when COVID-19 hit, we realized right away that there were going to be these supply chain disruptions, starting with access to solar components from China, but then extending because of lockdowns happening everywhere to the ability of customers to simply go and purchase an energy product or make a payment on that energy product. And so we suddenly saw this potential for the entire progress that we'd made towards SDG 7 to be set back really significantly and very quickly. So the real insight for us around the power of collaboration and collective action was we reached out to that community that we'd helped to cultivate over the past decade and said, we can't solve this problem alone. We need to do this collectively. And so we convened investors and organizations that could give that understanding of what was happening within the energy space, and came to the conclusion as a group that we needed to provide really, rapid support in terms of debt to help these companies with liquidity that would allow them to survive this period. And we're actually within a few weeks of being able to launch the Energy Access Relief Fund, which is going to be an $80 million debt fund that really provides that liquidity and that support to help preserve the progress. The companies that we're talking about have brought energy access to almost 500 million people and created 370,000 jobs. And again, it wasn't about each of us protecting our own portfolio. It was saying this is sector wide. And so that's been really exciting. And I think the takeaways for me in kind of reinforcing what we've learned about partnerships is it really does start with finding that common ground and being really honest about the concerns that we shared, the kinds of companies that we wanted to support and how we could support them. So I think that mutual value and alignment, it's worth taking the time at the beginning to solve for that. The second big takeaway for us was around transparency. And I think in a partnership, people go in so optimistically saying, let's do this. We want the same things. But if you can go a couple layers down and say, what are the strengths we bring to this partnership, but also what are the weaknesses? What are the sort of complementary ways that we can make this partnership work? And if you have real honesty and trust, you can kind of get to the heart of the matter and say, okay, you're going to manage this fund because you've worked with debt. We'll work to coordinate investors, and then everybody can sort of play the right part. And then the third piece is accountability, right? I think people get so excited when you can actually get a partnership off the ground that sometimes you can lose sight of whether or not it's actually achieving the target. And so laying out that definition of success right from the beginning, and again, being really honest if somehow we're falling short. And so what I think about with partnerships is you don't win points for politeness, you win points for honesty and being able to build the kind of trusting relationship that allows you to have hard conversations along the way. Those are the ones that we think ultimately have the biggest impact.
Thank you, Yasmina. Yes, that's very insightful. I think I actually relate so much to the next question I was going to ask Lorine also, because I know Lorine works with many of the top angel group and VC funds in the US. And as an investor and ecosystem builder, how do you approach collaboration? Did any of what Yasmina suggests, also resonate in your collaboration building?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I started investing with other investors when I started as an angel investor. Particularly when we were investing, most of the companies I invested in were women and diverse-led companies, and so there were definitely investors who were doing that. Also, sharing deal flow, finding really great deals, and then also co-investing and performing due diligence together. And so I started out when I started angel investing, definitely be collaborative. And there's a number of angel groups. And now that I have a fund, one of the things is deal flow is so important. And I'll give you an example. Actually, one of the investors in our fund, Motley Fool Ventures. So I think people have heard of Motley Fool. They actually have a VC arm, a fund. And they took some of that fund is investing in really, innovative technology type of companies, but they set aside part of that fund to be a fund of a fund, to invest in a number of funds who were doing really interesting things. And I was one of my fund, Rising America, was one of the funds that they invested in, along with 12 other funds. So that was a great partner to have. And they've been really a great partner. They actually have sent us great deal flow, in some cases, companies they've invested in. And as an example, one of our largest investments to date, we made an investment in Madison Reed. If you don't know what Madison Reed is, it's a hair coloring dyeing company, which had tremendous growth last year with the pandemic because people were not going to hair salons to color their hair. Really great founder. She's a serial entrepreneur, Amy Errett, and then also she was a VC as well, and an amazing operator. She saw how, came up with this product when she saw that hair coloring is bifurcated. You can go to your hair salon, very expensive, $200-$300, get your hair colored, or you can go to a local pharmacy and pick up a box, $10, but it's filled with a ton of chemicals, not very safe. And so she saw that there was nothing in the middle. She created this wonderful product, manufactured in Italy. EU is very strict upon what types of things that you can put in products. And then selling it directly to the consumer, omni-channels, selling it online direct to consumer, using AI where you can figure out your hair coloring and talk to people as well. And then she also has brick and mortar with her hair color bars that are in 30 cities throughout the United States. And then she has a deal with Ulta Beauty, which is a large beauty company, think of Sephora, but also a large company. And she's the only hair coloring company that sold. Motley Fool introduced us to her because also our fund invests not only in diverse founders, but LGBTQ-led founders. And her fund was closed. She had already raised $50 million, was closing the fund. She took a meeting with us and she was impressed with us because we were a team of all women. My partners have been investing, some of them have been investing for 20 plus years. One was a seed investor in JetBlue, private equity investor, amazing background. And she was really impressed with our team and wanted to have us on the cap table. And so, again, this is collaboration. That's one example. When we're also making investments with companies, one of the things is these entrepreneurs are challenged to get investments. In some cases, studies have shown that actually, particularly women of color, have to have 150 meetings before they get any funding versus 60 meetings for other types of investors. And so when we see a great company, we definitely activate our network. We reach out to other VC funds and say, here's this great company, you should think about investing in them. We also will have pitch meetings where we bring in, so the entrepreneur is not pitching everyone. We do one kind of pitch meeting. We bring in our circle of people who invest in these types of entrepreneurs, and we pull them in and say, take a look at this company, and they refer us to deals. And so, we've created this ecosystem where we can find really great companies, best in class companies, and then also pull in other investors who want to invest in these types of companies.
Oh, this is really amazing. I'm really, it's so great to hear that you have drive collective action amongst the investment community, especially towards women entrepreneurs as well as founders of colors. This is a perfect segue to our second segment of our panel discussion around building a more inclusive and efficient ecosystem for women impact leaders. Women impact leaders play an incredibly important role in achieving UN SDG goal. And this is what we have learned in the Cartier Women Initiative. All the women entrepreneurs in our program are trying to solve for at least one of the UN SDG goals via launching a business as a force for good. And we know that there's a preference for women running businesses that makes a difference in the world. And we also know that women have a preference for investing in social and environmental change. And so, Lorine, you have definitely shown us that you're hyper-focused on capital. So can you tell us a bit about how this led to the investment thesis of the Rising America Fund?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think really for us, we wanted to get capital to these entrepreneurs. I'm obviously African American. One of the things is there was a study, Digital Undivided did a study called Project Diane that looked at African American founders of tech startups. And if you looked at their funding, it was something like 0.0. Basically, you round it, it was 0% of those companies get funding. And when the ones that did get funding, on average, they would raise only about $36,000 versus, other groups raising over $1 million. And so, by way of my background, I had worked at startups, two of which were sold, were successful. And so had been an operator, knew the importance of having equity and growth capital to fund and fuel your business. And so, that's how our thesis came about, is that one of the big problems is that, these types of companies are not getting funding. And, for these communities, being an entrepreneur is the quickest way to gain wealth. And so, and we believe that, we believe that talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. And what I mean by that is there are so many amazing and talented entrepreneurs that are out there, but because they don't have a network, they don't necessarily come from, money. They may, in some cases, be first generation that goes to college. They don't have that deep entrenched network. But yet they're not able to, they may get as far as they can get, but to really grow their company, they don't have access to capital. And so really for us, we really want to make sure that we get capital to those entrepreneurs. But I think there's three C's in capital. We call the 3 C's at capital. So there's financial capital, writing the check, which, these entrepreneurs certainly need, but they also need what I call social capital. And so, activating, so we activate our networks for the entrepreneurs that we invest in, and even the ones that we don't invest in. There may not be a fit for our fund. We'll reach out to other funds who may be investing in more earlier stage companies. They take a look at this company. We will, all of our funds have up to 249 investors in our fund. Many of those investors, we have some family offices, have some institutional investors. But we also have individual investors. Most of our investors, 95% are women. Some are executives, some have had exits themselves. And so we activate that network and say, who do you know? So for instance, if it's a consumer packaged goods type of company, they may want to get their product in a Walmart or a Costco. We will, reach out to our network and most likely we have someone in our network who has connections, maybe either work at those companies or, can connect them. And so that's the social capital. The other C is the human capital. And so, a lot of these companies are really good at what they're doing, maybe great at marketing, getting their product out there, word of mouth and all of that. But, in terms of financials, that may be their weak spot. And so looking at, again, our network or people we know who can help them, with that. And they may do it, purely for free because they want to help these entrepreneurs and mentor them. And so, I think a lot of times people think, writing a check, and I tell entrepreneurs as well, in some cases, yes, a check is important. Financial capital is very important, but there's other ways that people can provide capital to you that in some cases may be priceless. And so that's another thing that we focus on. And, in our ecosystem, in Portfolio and outside of Portfolio, we really do that and provide that to the entrepreneurs we invest in, as well as the ones that we don't invest in.
That is terrific. Thank you, Lorine. We are also in agreement of the 3C of the capital. It is what we have provided in the Cartier Women Initiative also. And Lisa, what has been your experience in terms of building inclusive capital as an investor base? And what has that benefit, if there's any benefit that has brought to Kuli Kuli?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I joke that I've raised every kind of capital from everyone who's possibly giving up capital, which case in point, we've raised money from Portfolia. Wendy's one of our investors. But in the early days, I started this company when I was 25, and I had never worked in food before. I just felt really passionate that this superfood could help a lot of people, and I wanted to fulfill my promise to the women I'd made and that I met in Peace Corps and try and sell it in the US. And so, I think it was really amazing to me how many of Kuli Kuli's first investors turned out to be women. And I think they really saw that, hey, maybe she doesn't know what she's doing, but she's going to work really hard and she's going to figure it out. And I give, these women angel networks a ton of credit for just giving us that initial capital to get off the ground. And, we've gone on and raised about 10 million in capital now. Kellogg is one of our largest investors, and it's been a really interesting journey. I think if you had told me, 5 years ago, hey, the maker of Frosted Flakes is going to invest in this kind of like unknown African superfood, I would have told you that you were totally crazy. But for them, they saw this really amazing opportunity to work with us. And, they said over and over again how much they appreciated our social mission, appreciated our authenticity, appreciated the way that we were connecting with consumers and the way that we were bringing this, amazing nutrient-dense plant to the US market. And that they wanted to be a part of that. And they've gone above and beyond in providing, access to kind of buyers, access to R&D teams, legal, sort of whatever we need. And I think, a lot of our other investors and those women angel investors in particular have really tried to go above and beyond and open their networks as well. And so I think that it is important to write checks, and it's, as people of color who get way less funding, women in general get way less funding, but it's also really important to think about those other C's and the intangibility of making those connections, because we've found that some of those connections have then resulted in much bigger checks down the line, so you never really know where those conversations are going to go.
Great. And now that you have mentioned this idea of connection, I want to go back to Lorine. You were named one of the 50 most connected women in America. Can you share with us some advice and best practices for building meaningful connection and collaboration capital, and especially amongst minority and female entrepreneurs? You also highlighted to us maybe some ideas around whisper networks. So share with us about that.
Yeah, sure. So I was named by Marie Claire. That was a number of years ago. And I think, when I think about networking, I really operate out of, kind of an abundance mentality as opposed to scarcity. And so what I mean by that is, I try to connect people, don't expect anything in return. I think that the universe will conspire and it'll come back to you in some way, but I don't have that expectation. And, if I can help someone, I try to do that, and it's not always, obviously my fund is pretty focused. We see, hundreds of companies, and we can't invest in every single company, but, I can open up my network and connect people. So with that also, I am part of networks. There's something called The List, which is a really great network. It was launched about 10 years ago, and it's a network of women who are in media, very prominent women, media, technology, entrepreneurs, in some cases, some are household names. Our membership is, you have to apply to get in, or you have to be nominated to get in and recommended by someone. And so I've been a member for about 3 years, and it's really, it's basically, an email list, but we do have events, pre-COVID, we were having in-person events, but really I love it because it's really, people will say, we had something for a member recently, a couple of days ago, she came out with her new book, and, had a well-known news anchor interviewing her and, amplifying her book coming out and really being supportive. And the book is about connecting, and she's just such a connector. And so we rally behind women who are part of this network. There's about 500 of us. And, we're there for each other. And, someone is looking for a career transition, and we'll, open our network and see how we can help them. And so what we call this whisper network, which is not a coined phrase that I've coined, but it's been, there's certain networks that are out there that are focused on women. Then also I'm a part of a network called Stealth Mode. It's for, diverse people in the tech industry. And so you've got VCs, you have entrepreneurs, and again, same type of thing. It's a listserv, but, people post opportunities. We have companies that are looking for funding. We try to help them. And, entrepreneurs who are looking to fill positions and jobs, so I think there's been this emergence of networks where people are coming together with their peers to help one another and to be a resource for one another. And I think that's so important. And again, you should go into those networks, again, looking at being a resource to people and not thinking about what can I take, what can I get from that network. And they've been successful. Both of those networks I mentioned is because people have been very giving and want to be helpful. And you don't have people in there who are, kind of takers, and, because it just will ruin it. And so you want to be kind of around like-minded people. And so those networks are really important. And I think particularly for entrepreneurship, as well as, funding and VCs, it's relationships really. And if you're looking at companies, as much as we're doing due diligence on companies, they're asking their network, what do they know about these investors? Are they good investors? Do they just write a check and then, are, kind of constantly, reaching out to you? How are you doing? You don't want that. We write a check and we want to help them as much as possible, but we want them to run their business. And so that's really important as well. Reputation is everything.
Great, thank you, Lorine. And maybe next, let me move on to Yasmina. You spearheaded Acumen's gender integration work, and how does Acumen apply a gender lens approach to its portfolio?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think, as we've already talked about, there's so many facets to women's leadership and impact. I was going to share just one example of how we try to look at the value of gender equity. There's an amazing woman who is actually both a Cartier Women's Initiative finalist from 2018 and also an Acumen Fellow. Dr. Sarah Saeed Khurram from Pakistan. She's a doctor who basically built a telemedicine model that would allow her to tap into the overlooked and underutilized medical talent of women in Pakistan, who were often sort of, ramped out of the medical profession because of social norms, but still had all the capability. And so she built this telemedicine platform really to engage women in the field in more productive ways. And interestingly, I think she's really become a master of collaboration. During COVID, she was able to provide really vital health services to people who couldn't actually get health care in person, expanded her program dramatically, partnered with the government, and has provided over 200,000 consultations just in the last few months. And I think, when we think about the value of gender equity, obviously we know that the metrics, and we've talked about them tonight, are really off balance when it comes to women's access to capital, opportunities for women entrepreneurs. But we think about this as, how do we build the portfolio that's going to solve the world's biggest problems? And we know that it will require us to build a portfolio that is representative of the innovation, the ideas, the creativity. The business case has been made a million times over that women are very successful as entrepreneurs. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, Wendy, that they maybe have a tendency to incorporate impact into their business model early on. And so we want to make sure that when we build our portfolio, we really start with the same question. How are we solving the problems of poverty? How do those issues impact women and men differently? And then how do we build that portfolio of leaders that allow us to solve those problems? And so it's been really wonderful actually working with all of our regional teams to really start to ask those questions. So not a top-down, hit this target, meet this number, but say, let's look at the problem, let's look at the community of entrepreneurs, and then recognize that those gaps do exist. So we've been looking for ways to support women entrepreneurs, whether through Acumen Academy and providing resources to women entrepreneurs. We're actually exploring developing an accelerator specifically focusing on women entrepreneurs. But the other reality that we know is that this is not just a challenge. This isn't just a challenge for women entrepreneurs, but it's a challenge for investors that I think are often missing the boat. And so how do we really help to build that awareness about the opportunities that are there? And so much of our investing is trying to catalyze opportunities, not just for entrepreneurs, but for investors. So we've embarked on an effort, another great collaboration with a group of impact investors that includes Alpha Mundi, the Shell Foundation, CEF, and others, who really want to help our companies to deepen their impacts for women and integrate gender into their business model. Not again, just because it's the right thing to do, which it is, but because we believe that it will deepen their social and financial performance. And so all of these investors are actually providing support to our portfolio companies to support gender equity in ways that are material to their business. But we realized that as we were doing that, we had a lot to learn. What is the most effective way to help companies integrate gender equity? And so we're aggregating our experiences across all 6 impact investors. We'll be able to evaluate 30 different interventions and then report back out to the investing community and say, if you care about gender, don't just try to count up the number of women that show up in your portfolio or that show up on boards, but really think deeply about how to support entrepreneurs to really integrate gender equity. And here's how, here's what worked, here's the impact that it had. So we're excited to share that research out next year. And it's a lesson for us that collaboration isn't just about aggregating capital, but often it's about aggregating insight and getting people to work smarter because we're willing to share knowledge with each other and kind of lift up the whole field.
Wow, thank you, Yasmina. We're looking forward to that research, and yeah, that resonates again very much with what Lorine described about the 3 C's. It's not just around aggregating financial capital, but also all the great human capital insight that gets generated from each of our experiences. So we're on to our last, actually 3 minutes, and so I'm thinking maybe I will end by asking each speaker to recommend one step of how to drive radical collaboration and inclusiveness. Lisa, maybe I start with you.
Yeah, I think the first step that everyone can do is just look at within your network who are, early stage women founders in particular, who maybe don't have access to the network you have, don't have access to the capital you have, and carve out some time to talk to them. So I carve out 3 hours of my week and spend time with women and minority entrepreneurs, just chatting and seeing how I can help and how I can connect. Because I think, as we talked about before, the best kind of networking is just an open approach of trying to offer support.
Great. And Lorine?
I'll just double down on what Lisa said. I think, just looking at what you can start small, just, mentoring some women entrepreneurs, or it could even be women who are looking at career change. It's interesting. A stat came out that 2 million women are leaving the workplace due to COVID. And a friend of mine launched this whole campaign to get people, not only women, but just to give up 60 minutes, an hour of their time to mentor one of those women who has left, the workplace, and to mentor them. And so, and it's created this whole ripple effect. It was a social media campaign. And so, starting out small and just kind of what you can do in your own backyard and in your own communities to help, women and figure that out. And then if we all do that, I think it'll be really impactful.
Thank you. And Yasmina?
Yeah, and before I go, I want to mention the name of the research in case anyone wants to follow up. It's called G-Search. Long acronym, but I won't go into it. But yeah, I absolutely 100% agree on mentorship. And I think it's a two-way street. I think being able to support women at different stages of their development as leaders is tremendous, but also as a mentor, it's incredibly rewarding to feel like you're actually passing on the value of your experience. It's especially at a time now where I think we all feel like we're running around trying to do too much. Those are the days when I feel like I know I did something that actually mattered, because it's mentorship that's helped me in my life. The other thing I think, though, is really important to remember is that we all have an opportunity to shift the conversation. And believe it or not, there is still a conversation about the business case. And we hear arguments all the time about building evidence. And I think we have to sort of push beyond that. The evidence is in. And it's about having that next conversation. How do we move the capital? How do we open the networks? And really demand of those who are not already in the movement to say, we need to start to move and expect that change, because to not do that, we've actually learned, is fiscally and socially irresponsible, right? So this is the moment to say we have no excuses. This is the direction we need to move in, and I think it is through collaboration. It's not if, it's how. How do I do this better? What do I need to learn? Where do I find the deal flow? But no longer the question of, why does this make sense for us? It's the jury is very much clear on that.
Great. Well, thank you, Yasmina. Well, that concludes our panel discussion today. Thank you, Lisa, Yasmina, and Lorine for your time. And that wraps it up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Welteroth, and I am so honored and thrilled to be a part of Cartier's International Women's Month celebration event. This is such an honor, and I'm so excited that I can connect with you even virtually. And I've been asked to share a couple words with women out there and young women out there, women entrepreneurs who are leading change. First of all, I see you. And I know it's not easy, but the world is literally waiting for you to say and do and create what only you can say and do and create. And I know that it can be daunting sometimes and isolating, and you can feel like you're out here on a ledge on your own, but you are not. Remember when it gets hard that you might stand as one, but you really represent for thousands of us. And there is a big tribe that is standing with you globally, that is making change and making waves in different ways, right alongside you. And we are really all in this together. But I want to also say that while we're all working in our different silos to be the change we want to see, honestly, you were put here with a purpose that is uniquely your own. And if you ever feel lost along the way or just frustrated or near giving up, I just hope that you'll be reminded of your why and allow your why, your reason, your mission to guide you through the hard parts of the journey, and be reminded that you are so much more than just one title or one job or even one mission. And I know that I just want to remind you all that you are allowed to be more than one thing in your life, and to embrace all the parts of you and everything that lights you up and incorporate that into your path. You can be more than one thing. You really can. And if you find yourself stuck and you need to pivot, which is the word of 2020 and 2021, know that you can pivot with purpose and continue your mission, and it just might look a little different sometimes. And it doesn't mean it's less important. Sometimes we run into obstacles that are meant to redirect us, to allow us to have even greater impact, to allow us to do our work with even more joy. And so I just hope that you persevere through every challenge that comes your way, because we need you. We need all of you to stay committed to pursuing your purpose, because when you are true to you, you give permission to other women around you to be true to themselves too. And, the last thing I'll say is fear is part of this process. If you are crippled by fear in certain moments, know that you are so close to a breakthrough and you cannot give up. I don't know a single woman in history that has made history and that has had great impact who has not moved through fear. It's just part of the process. So make friends with fear and dance with fear, and know that whenever that feeling comes up, allow it to remind you that you're alive and you are here for a reason, and you're living at your edge. That's all fear means, is that you are pushing and you are growing, and that's what's required if you're going to make change in this world. And you definitely were put here to make change. So with that, happy International Women's Month, and thank you so much, Cartier, for bringing us all together and allowing me to share a few words. I hope it lands with some of you and that you feel energized to keep doing the work that you were put here to do. Mwah! Bye.
The mission of the Cartier Women Initiative is to shine a light on woman changemaker who has sacrificed so much to create social change. I think Elaine just said it best. We see you. It's really an honor today to share with you the 3 stories of women impact leaders that Cartier has had the privilege of supporting. Our first lighting talk is by Emily Levy, our 2019 Cartier Women Initiative Fellow. Emily is an award-winning social impact entrepreneur and a public speaker. She founded Mighty Well based on her experience as a patient living with lymph disease, and she has been honored by many world-class entrepreneurship programs and is currently the youngest member of Babson College Hall of Fame as a rising star. Mighty Well creates innovative product in an adaptive wear market, which is expected to reach close to $400 billion by 2026. Mighty Well applies sportswear fabric technology to the medical industry and is building a digital supportive community of friends in fight. Please join me in welcoming Emily Levy in her lightning talk.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Emily Levy, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Mighty Well. As Wendy just said, we are an adaptive wear company, which creates innovative and stylish apparel for people living with chronic illnesses and disabilities. But really what's at the core of our brand is fostering a community of patients and caregivers to support each other through thick and thin. Mighty Well started when I had my own experience living with chronic illness. At 19, I was diagnosed with neurological Lyme disease and subsequently developed other chronic illnesses that have really had my life ebb and flow over the years. When I was talking to you all last year in Boston, I never expected to be where we are today, but really over this past year, it's given us so much time to grow and look back on where it started. You'll see on your screen in front of you that I'm standing holding a postcard in my college's mailroom with my co-founder and best friend, Maria Del Mar Gomez. When we developed our first product, which was a catheter sleeve to protect my own medical device, we didn't expect to really grow into what we have become today. A quick story is the patient who we're sending our very first order to was an immunocompromised pregnant mother who was also living with a PICC line, and she needed something to protect her device. She needed it so badly that she was even willing to pay for our prototype. This really got us thinking about what other products does the chronic illness community need? How can we go from one product that helped me to the products that can help the 2/3 of Americans that are living with some type of chronic illness or disability? Back in college, it was really difficult when I had my first medical device because I felt like people were looking maybe at my arm or my illness instead of me. This photo of myself, my co-founder Yousef, and Maria looks like we're ready for a night out on the town, but really I was so embarrassed about the medical device I had and the comments that people were saying to me. Growing up in a surfing family, I knew that we could use innovative sportswear technology that was being applied to athletes and apply those similar technologies to the patient experience to make it that much better. I'm so fortunate that as my own health has ebbed and flowed, I have 2 amazing co-founders who can help do everything, even on days that I'm not necessarily feeling my best. At this point in my life, I didn't really see my illness as an asset. I saw myself really as a patient, someone who had to wear a mask even before the whole world did. Through my experience, I found that there was actually a whole community of patients that were using social media and the internet to almost have a digital diary of where they were chronicling what was going on with their health. And through that, we began fostering relationships with other patients in the community and asking them, what do they need and how can they be included? I'm really proud to say we've gone from a first product to protect that medical device in my arm to being able to go on and really be thought leaders in the chronic illness and disability movement. I think all of us are thinking throughout this past year, what are the antiquated thoughts and ideas that we're all living with? And I used to see my chronic illness as really a weakness. But as I've met more people and we've come out with more products, it's really just allowed me to believe that adaptive wear and fostering a movement for those with disabilities really is our future. And I'll leave you with a quick story. After the Cartier Awards, I was fortunate enough to speak for Cartier in Japan. And we had been thinking of developing masks for our community because as you saw in the photo before, we needed them as immunocompromised people. And when I went to Japan and spoke for Cartier, in between all of my talks, I ran around to all the markets trying to find, what were people doing and wearing. And we were able to bring those ideas back to Mighty Well. And we fast-tracked this product really because of the learnings that I had through the program. And throughout this, I want to leave you with the message that adapting is really in all of us right now. You don't have to look at that hard thing in your life as a negative. At Mighty Well, we truly believe that you can turn sickness into strength. And we want to especially thank Cartier for the opportunity to help us grow our business and be early adopters in the adaptive wear movement and supporting me as I thrive as a disabled founder of a woman-owned company. So thank you all for being our friends in the fight, and we can't wait to see you all rocking your mighty masks.
Thank you so much, Emily, for your inspiration and your friends in fight. Our next lighting talk guest is Laurie Adams of Women for Women International. Laurie is the CEO of Women for Women International, a leading global organization that works with women survivors of war in Afghanistan, Bosnia, Democratic Republic of Congo, Kosovo, Iraq, Nigeria, Rwanda, and Southern Sudan, offering support tools and access to life-changing skills to women and communities from crisis and poverty to stability and economic self-sufficiency. Laurie is an innovative leader, strategist, and gender rights advocate with more than 30 years of experience in international development and human rights globally. Please join me in welcoming a lightning talk by Laurie Adams.
Thank you, Wendy. So the Oxford Dictionary defines an entrepreneur as any business person who's facing additional financial risk. So that means any woman starting a business, because you all know we have less access to credit, less pay, less time, and less role models, with only 4.4% of the world's CEO women, with only 1% of institutions giving their vendor contracts to women, and with only 5% of credit going to women. That's why I believe so passionately in the shared mission that Women for Women and Cartier Women's Initiative has. That is investing in women entrepreneurs so that we can achieve our full potential and giving us the necessary economic and social support. So my own story, however, as you've just heard from Wendy, is not of an entrepreneur. I might consider myself an intrapreneur. Rather than start a new organization, I joined Women for Women because I saw it had developed a tried and tested approach that I believe could and should be more widely adopted. Why reinvent the wheel if you can make it into a flywheel that delivers greater and greater impact? Women for Women's model is to bring women together to learn and earn through our one-year intensive Stronger Women, Stronger Nations program. An important component of this model is that it's holistic. It addresses not just earnings and savings, but also health and well-being and women's connections to support. But the secret sauce, the one that in 30 years of doing monitoring and evaluation makes me think this works better than anything else I've seen, is our focus on power. Both women's internal power, our belief in ourselves, and our collective power together. The first component of our program is a weekly training in social and economic issues, done in groups where women become lifelong friends and sources of support and get sources of support. Trainers who are often graduates pass on their success and mentor participants between classes and after graduation. We provide rights and negotiation to group leaders so they can help their peers confront barriers outside the program. We connect women to a sister, usually in the United States, who provides sponsorship of $35 a month, but also rights. I've heard so many women say that having someone across the world in America believe in me when so many people in my own community don't is what makes me believe in myself. Women provide each other credit in Village Savings and Loans Association that broaden their networks. Savings groups go on for years and years after our court intervention. The access to credit can be literally life-saving because women give each other gifts when they find each other having hardships such as bereavement or health illnesses. Women choose what kind of business to start with our guidance because we do market assessments to identify viable products and provide skills training. We secure equipment and assets to start women off. They choose whether to do so alone or in groups, such as in this 125-member beekeeping cooperative that has attracted investment of government. If norms constrain women to the home, as they do here in northern Iraq for Syrian women, or in Afghanistan, or with Muslims in northern Nigeria, they often choose tailoring or poultry. Women on our program on average double their income from, get this, 88 cents a day to $2 a day. Savings increase from an average of $13 to $88. When the next shock hits, women like Alice, who've had to flee South Sudan to Uganda due to the conflict, women can rebuild again because they believe in themselves. We are very proud that in our first 25 years, we have reached 500,000 women. But this is a drop in the bucket. We've estimated that there are over 280 million women living in conflict-affected states in extreme poverty where there is high levels of gender discrimination. The world's experts know that even though we have our sustainable development goals, these very women will be left behind if we continue with the current approaches. That's why I am so determined that Women for Women's approach must be shared with and scaled through others who have much larger reach and access to resources, so that millions, rather than thousands of women each year can benefit. We must deliver on today's theme, leveraging partnerships to fuel innovation and scale, and building collective support for women to lead change. A critical part of any scaling strategy is to have evidence of your impact to attract investment and partnership. Another is to constantly test and improve your model. So a couple of years ago, we started doing random controlled trials and entering our program into evaluations others were running, such as DFID's What Works program in Afghanistan. When the World Bank saw the results of that research, which validated our model, they called our curriculum best in class and asked all their partners across Afghanistan to adopt it. Cartier Philanthropy has been a key partner in our scaling strategy. With Cartier in Kosovo, we have tested advanced training rather than cash stipends. With Cartier in Rwanda, we're seeing whether if you enroll men in a rights program, it leads to better opportunities for women. And just this morning, the head of Cartier Philanthropy, Pascal, hosted an event sharing the results of our evaluation and research with dozens of other potential partners. I could not be more grateful for Cartier's support and for the chance to share our approach with you today. I want to end very quickly, because I know I'm running out of time, with a story that illustrates the social impact of investing in just one woman. This picture is from Rwanda, where in 1994, in less than 100 days, more than 500,000 Rwandans were massacred, and more than 500,000 women were gang raped as a strategy to wipe out their ethnicity. This was one of the most tragic chapters of our global history. Cartier has been a partner there, and we've reached almost 100,000 women. And we've also been able to build this Women's Opportunity Center, which enables women to gather, to learn, and earn. In addition to being an eco lodge, the center is registered as a social enterprise and is home to several businesses, including making yogurt, tailoring, handicrafts. When the pandemic hit, Rwanda went into lockdown for 3 months. We were able to register the walk as an essential business so women could trade. With no visitors, however, there were no sales. Enter Jane. Jane is a graduate of our program from 2006 and has a real entrepreneurial spirit, which enabled her to send both of her daughters to university. She was also one of the first people in Rwanda to see the potential in making masks at the start of the pandemic. She helped other women at the walk make more masks. Demand outstripped supply, and thanks to Jane's entrepreneurship and our existing partnerships, soon 102 women were sewing masks, finding manual sewing machines, and moving to our events tent. To date, they've made 53,000 masks for women in our program and to raise money for women. More than 14 years after Jane enrolled in the program with support of a sponsor, Nancy from across the globe, she is still creating new waves of social impact. This could not have happened with the partnership and investment of Cartier and others in investing in the center. So it's a great example of the kinds of partnerships we are discussing today. The government provided the land, philanthropy allowed for the creation of the center, businesses who partnered with us provided the contracts, and women themselves, like Jane, powered the entire enterprise. Because entrepreneurs, like extrapreneurs, are always pitching our cause, I'm going to end with a call to action. And that is to ask you to join our Power to Change commitment, because we all have the power to bring about change in whatever role we have. You can sponsor a woman in our program like Nancy sponsored Jane and know that the ripple effects will last for decades. And you can be an entrepreneur. You don't have to start a new business or an organization to bring about innovation or build partnerships. You can make a real difference everywhere, anywhere, anytime. That is the power of Women for Women.
Thank you so much, Laurie, for your experience in rising collective action. It's truly very inspiring. Our next storyteller is Diane Youssef, CEO of Change Water Lab and 2018 Cartier Women Initiative Fellow. Diana is a serial entrepreneur with 10 plus years of experience commercializing technology for social and environmental impact in the developing world. Formerly, she consulted with McKinsey, co-founded IFC World Bank Life Science Investment Group, and is the United Nations Inclusive Market Incubator, and was a seed stage VC with Battelle Venture. She co-founded WeCycler, Immerse Global, and Saxi Solar. Please join me in welcoming Diane Youssef of Change Water Labs.
Thanks, Wendy. My name is Diane Youssef. I'm the founder of Change Water Labs, and my team has invented a clean, green alternative to flushing with a toilet that makes human waste disappear. Around the world, half of all people live with no access to a safe toilet, and that's because they live in places with no sewage plumbing, so they can't flush. In fact, all non-sewered sanitation is such a big problem that $18 billion a year gets spent on non-flush toilets. And why exactly do toilets matter? Well, safe sanitation touches so many aspects of how people and the planet thrive and survive. So while we probably all know that poor sanitation is a huge driver of infectious disease, it also impacts girls' access to education. 1 in 5 girls drops out of school early, in part because their toilets don't have their schools don't have safe private toilets. And because they drop out early, that cuts them off from future prosperity and agency. The lack of private toilets also exposes girls and women to high rates of sexual violence. And poor sanitation pollutes communities, poisons scarce water resources, and contributes to climate change. So when flushing isn't an option, all that waste has to be collected frequently, and that's hugely costly because then it has to be hauled away. And the crazy thing is that 95% of what they're trucking around is really just pure water. So Change Water Labs has invented a smart solution to get rid of all that flushing and cut down on waste collection by shrinking the waste inside the toilet itself. Human waste is mostly water. So instead of flushing, we evaporate it. We've developed the iThrone toilet, which is a drop-in toilet that gets rid of daily waste by turning it into pure water and power. It uses two proprietary technologies to shrink waste. The first is an evaporative membrane that we call shrink wrap for crap that soaks up and evaporates water content of waste. The iThrone uses bags of this membrane to collect and evaporate waste, shrinking daily on-site volumes by 95%. We're also developing a new technology, a P-powered bio battery that gets rid of urine by turning it into electricity, which we will use to power internal ventilation that speeds up the evaporation of waste and removes toilet odors. The iThrone will get safe, clean sanitation to more people at lower cost. The cost to install and service a single comparable offline toilet could instead pay for 5 iThrone toilets. And while most non-flush toilets have to be emptied every day, the iThrone only needs to be emptied once a month, which cuts collection costs in half and allows waste removers to service 20 times more toilets. Thus, the iThrone makes offline sanitation much more scalable and sustainable. Initially, we're targeting the ballooning need for safe sanitation in fast-growing urban areas and for drop-in sanitation in emergencies. Last March, we deployed our first iThrones to Kiboga district in Uganda. These toilets provided 400 users per week with safe, clean sanitation and 100% hygienic containment of the waste and no odor. The iThrone also successfully shrank on-site volumes by 6 to 10 times, which allowed the toilets to operate for 2 to 4 weeks without having to be emptied. So our iThrones will clean up communities and reduce disease spread. And not only do the iThrones not use or pollute water, they actually convert waste back into clean water. And additionally, our waste dehydrating technology cuts down on carbon emissions related to sanitation by cutting off methane off-gassing from raw wet sewage and cutting down on waste collection. The concept of evaporative sanitation was originally inspired by work that I'd done for NASA, looking at ways to recycle wastewater on the space station. And I thought, with the ISS being the ultimate off-grid location, I thought we could apply this similar idea to offline water treatment and sanitation on Earth. The other inspiration for my venture were these 3 little ones. There's my 3 daughters. When I became a mom, and I think probably a lot of you in the audience might relate to this, basically my career came to a stall. And I wanted to create a new narrative for these 3 girls and all girls around the world, that women don't have to ask permission to fit into the workplace, that we could break out of the old molds and we can chart our own path. So 5 years later, I hope that I'm proving out to my girls this idea that they have the way to create their own path. And also by contributing a solution that empowers all girls around the world to thrive. And we're hoping to make safe sanitation available to everyone everywhere. And we're so thankful to Cartier for being an early supporter of this ambitious vision. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Diana, for your impressive work. And we're so happy that you have invented the iThrone toilet for all of us. And that wraps up our segment for the lightning talk. We'll be back shortly with our Q&A session. I have the pleasure of welcoming back all of our speakers today for a Q&A session with you. If you can, please submit your question into the event website. I will moderate the questions to our speaker. And for all speakers, if you can please mute yourself while not speaking, that would be great. So our first question is actually for Lorine. You had referred to many whisper networks. How might one get into one that if one is not included? And what are some tips about starting one?
So, that's a good question. Whisper networks, you need to know someone who's a member of it and to be nominated. And so, the name Whisper, it's kind of obviously not public, but that's a tough question. But I do think just try to connect with people who are in that. What I would say in terms of starting one is just, you can, these networks that I told you they use basically email lists serve. And so it's pretty simple, and just kind of get together a group of people who are like-minded and are interested in the same topic as you, and then, build from there.
Thank you, Lorine. Our second question is for Mercedes. Mercedes, what is the significance of the Cartier Women Initiative for the brand, and why is it an important initiative for Cartier?
Thank you, Wendy. What we are finding today more so than ever is that consumers are increasingly seeking out brands that are supporting and making impactful contributions to social good. So what's important from the brand perspective is that you stay true and authentic to your core values. Supporting and empowering women is something that is deeply anchored in the culture of Cartier, and we've always drawn inspiration from bold, fearless women like those on our panels today throughout our history. And with efforts like CWI, this tradition will continue. So for 15 years, we're incredibly proud of this program's longevity and its recognition as one of the largest and most generous female-focused entrepreneurial competitions in the world.
Thank you, Mercedes. Our third question is for Yasmina. Yasmina, is the Acumen Fund involved in trying to influence regulatory frameworks in emerging markets? For instance, the renewable energy regulation, which has been prohibited in the developing world.
A great question. So I think for us, we haven't sort of taken on an advocacy role, but by building networks of investors and working really closely with entrepreneurs, we're trying to understand what are the barriers that make it harder for entrepreneurs to succeed. So we can illuminate those in the sort of knowledge sharing work that we do. It's different from advocacy. Our view is if we can demonstrate successful enterprises that are finding a different path forward, we can start to change the conversation about ways that people can pay for energy, the kinds of products and services people need. And we can also compare across regions and across countries and demonstrate where policies that are friendly to entrepreneurs are helping to close the gap in access to energy. So that's the role that we see, is really illuminating the models where entrepreneurs are breaking through and hoping that those can influence policy in other countries that might make it harder for entrepreneurs to succeed.
Thank you, Yasmina. The next question we have is for Diana. Thank you so much for the inspiring talk. And I'm sure many of us are wondering how we can contribute to these initiatives. Which is the first step you would take, and which 3 characteristics you consider are most important for us to be able to put ourselves in the service of these genuine missions?
So in terms of contributing to initiatives like this, I think, obviously ventures like mine are always looking for investment or people to join as team members, if that's what was the question, I think. As far as characteristics, maybe is the question asking about characteristics of people who can start ventures like this? Is that what you mean? Or sorry.
I think it was around how to contribute to the initiative. So so maybe approach it that way. Yeah.
Right. Well, we're a for-profit company, so contributing would be investing. We're not a not-for-profit. But I think that another thing that's been really helpful for us is just sort of, spreading the awareness of what we're doing and calling out how important it is. Because I think when I started this, people thought like, really, that's a thing, and I think that was kind of, to get it to be more acceptable that, this is a problem and that entrepreneurs can look like me and they can have a life path like me. I think, maybe one thing I would say to this particular audience is the reason that I talked about being a mom is because my entrepreneurial story is not the Silicon Valley, MIT grad who did, computer science and started a startup in the garage with their roommate eating ramen noodles. It was a story of sort of, what felt like failure at the time for a professional woman, and then trying to figure out, well, if I don't fit, how do I create something that where I can fit? And so I think maybe another way to contribute is just highlight more stories about how women arrive at entrepreneurship to basically have the ecosystem not take it as a shock to the system when women approach entrepreneurship and when they do things differently.
Thank you, Diana. And that's such an important recognition. The next question and the last question is for Lisa. What advice do you have for women who are in the early phases of starting their business? For example, just at the very early stage of drafting their business plan. How did you get to building a business like yours?
think my number one piece of advice is to talk to everyone you can. Talk to lots of people who are going to tell you no. One of the things I did very early on, as I mentioned before, I think I hit up, probably over 500 people for investment in the early days. And 99% of those people told me no, but I kept them all on a list and I updated them quarterly with how Kuli Kuli is growing, as we continued to make progress. And lo and behold, in our last round of fundraising, one of those people who had literally told me no for 5 years wrote me a $2 million check. So don't give up.
That's amazing story. Great. And with that, I want to take this opportunity to thank you all the speakers for sharing with us their inspirational story on building alliances and driving change and being such awesome women. And I will pass the session back to Mercedes. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. What an incredibly insightful conversation. I think this celebration of women impact leaders has certainly inspired us all to do our part in changing the world for the better. A huge thank you again to Wendy, our panelists, our CWI community, and to all of you for joining us this evening. I look forward to seeing you all again in late May as we virtually celebrate the 2021 edition of Cartier Women's Initiative and shine a light on this year's new group of 24 fellows. We'll be sharing more details on those virtual sessions and the award ceremony in the months to come, so please stay tuned.